And now we move on to the 8 verses of thought transformation. So as given in this particular sadhana, when we engage in the practice, we visualize Chenrezig on the crown of our head. And after the recitation of each verse, we visualize light coming out of Chenrezig and entering into our heart center, enabling us to be able to practice these mind training markers, thoughts, with utmost sincerity and least of resistance. So the very first one, with the thought of attaining enlightenment for the welfare of all beings who are more precious than a wish-fulfilling jewel, I will constantly practice holding them dear. So this text was composed by Geshe Langri Tangpa, also known as Dorje Senge, a Kadampa master, a disciple of Four-Arm Chenrezig, who himself was a direct disciple of Acharya Atisha, the great Indian master who brought all these beautiful texts and sutras from India to Tibet. So it comes from the Kadampa tradition, and the purpose of this text was to be able to cultivate or train our mind in compassion and wisdom simultaneously, transforming our self-centered nature into an altruistic thought of bodhicitta. And there are many masters who have written commentaries on it. You're very welcome to look it up, especially the one by His Holiness Dalai Lama and by Geshe Rinchen. These two are the ones I have closely studied, so I recommend those. There are many others. So in a nutshell, this particular text, from verse 1 to 4th, is talking about cultivation of compassion and immeasurable compassion. From the verse 5 to 6, it is talking about cultivation of patience. From the verse 7th onwards, it talks about actually establishing oneself into the altruistic thought of bodhicitta. And the 8th verse is about wisdom. So now coming back to verse 1, with the thought of attaining enlightenment for the welfare of all beings who are more precious than a wish-fulfilling jewel, I will always cherish them. This particular verse itself makes a foundation of bodhicitta, the altruistic attitude, the intention to attain enlightenment, not just for oneself, but for every sentient being. And here, when we say every sentient being, even the ones whom we label as enemies, strangers, harm givers, are included in that. So imagine what is the kind or the level of that mind who holds such an amazing, beautiful thought. And it is an analogy given. And just as if you say a wish fulfilling jewel, I mean, that analogy doesn't sound in the modern context very sort of, relatable in some ways. But if you were given such a jewel, if you were given Aladdin's chirag, and you would rub the chirag and say, what would you ask for? You could ask for all kinds of wealth and, a mundane kind of things to make you happy in this samsaric world. But what if you were given that wish fulfilling jewel and you could ask for attainment of spontaneously arising bodhicitta? Here it's saying that human beings, every sentient being, is that chirag for you, is that wish fulfilling jewel for you. How? Because it is in relation with these human beings, even if they are not being nice to us, that we get to practice patience, that we get to practice tolerance, that we get to practice and generate a state of compassion. You know, how do we know someone is not nice to us? Because we know someone has been nice to us. So there's an interdependence. And of course, in actuality, there is no one out there who's an enemy. Now let me correlate this. When we did in the very beginning, we did four immeasurables, and we said extending the attitude of equanimity. So what happens in our mind? We categorize people as friends, enemies, and strangers. Friends are the ones whom I have a spontaneous liking for, and who gives into my, who we have common interests, and we play sports together, who we think will take care of or safeguard my interest at their heart, and I will do the same for them. And there is a level of attachment and affection in that. Enemies, of course, the ones who give me harm, and the whole narrative, and the same for me. I have a sense of resentment, aversion, avoidance towards them. And then comes a category of strangers where we say, I don't care. We're indifferent. Are these three categories permanent? Are these three categories, how we put people in them, always the same? So now imagine a scenario. You meet somebody in the metro, he bumped into you, and he immediately apologized. And he was being kind to you in the next moment. Could that lead that person, a stranger who bumped into you, that pleasant interaction, can lead it to be a friendship? Possible. So from the moment he was a stranger, within few minutes, there's a possibility of that person turning into the category of friend. Acquaintance and friend. Yeah. And then it can cultivate into a very deep, lasting friendship. And then we have seen very strong, good friends to the extent of happily married couples turning into sworn enemies. And then we have seen that an absolute stranger coming and helping us selflessly and turning into a good friend. And then we have also seen in our own experience colleagues, business partners, with whom we share everything, and then turning into sworn enemies. So how is that my mind? And we could be one of them. Today someone takes me as a friend, maybe a few years later, because of circumstances or change of heart, I don't want to see you anymore. But just now you were giving me all these beautiful messages and ready to die for me and swearing undying love. Because we are constantly changing, we should not let our mind be governed by these fleeting moments of attachment, aversion, and ignorance, of saying, stranger, I don't care. Now, this particular category, strangers, I don't care. The fact that we're sitting in this very vibrant, beautiful Gompa, some labor was engaged in constructing it, with whom we have no direct connection, but we're dependent on them. When the entire lockdown happened, who were we most dependent on? Safai Karamcharis. People who were cleaning our streets. We have no direct connection with them. Would you not want to wish them well? There are so many beings on this planet with whom you have no direct connection. And they have no direct connection with you. Should they not wish you well? Should they not have the thought that, oh, may all beings have good food to eat, warm beds to sleep in, kind support system around them, right? Hence, this is the way we will cultivate or give rise to a natural, spontaneous way of saying, may all beings be happy. So now we will lead ourselves, and rather I will lead you all into a short guided meditation on this. This is how we progress on this text today, okay? So assuming a comfortable posture, taking a few deep breaths, recite, first of all, recite this verse with me right now. With the thought of attaining enlightenment for the welfare of all beings who are most precious than a wish fulfilling jewel, I will always cherish them. Now close your eyes and visualize all beings around you, friends, strangers, and enemies, and bring about in your mind this thought. Each one of them, just like me, desires happiness. And each one of them fears suffering just as much as I do. And since we are all interdependent in some way or the other, generate a sense of gratitude towards them for providing the conditions for your growth, for your spiritual growth. And here to enhance our thought and to support our altruistic intention, we have already visualized Arya Chenrezig on the crown of our head, who's the embodiment of bodhicitta. So make a resolve in your heart. May I cherish others as precious treasures. And if you find resistance in your heart, simply remain with it without a sense of judgment. Because we start from where we are. Just relax. If you have difficulty extending it to the ones you have labeled as enemies or strangers, simply remain with one person for the entire duration of this meditative process. You can just simply abide in extending it first to your own friends and family. And slowly cultivate that eventually to all sentient beings. So please choose. Or you can alternately, if there is one family member, choose one person who's harmed you. Having extended this beautiful thought, generated this motivation, I will move on to the verse 2. Whenever I am with others, I will see myself as the lowest of all, and from the very depth of my heart, I will hold others as supreme. So, further uprooting our own sense of arrogance. And this verse is not there to create self deprecation, but to generate humility. Freeing oneself from the dominance of ego. Seeing others as supreme is basically cultivating respect and care rather than a sense of competition. We say maturity. You heard the word maturity? Now you are a mature person. But there's something called spiritual maturity. We could be sitting and meditating and reading a gazillion books and hours of being in dhyana. But if we lack this spiritual maturity, this is one way of cultivating it. To have a sense of humility and to bow before the other recognizing their Buddha nature. So we are not bowing towards or in front of them or in front of their weaknesses. We are bowing, we are recognizing, we are just as I have the potential, the latent potential to be enlightened, so does this being. Just as I am clouded with my own delusions, so is this being. Recognizing that aspect, we bow in front of them. Then we move on to the third one. In all actions, I will examine my mind, and the moment a disturbing attitude arises, endangering myself and others, I will firmly confront and avert it. This particular one teaches us to be vigilant. And vigilance is the guardian of transformation. Negative emotions like anger, jealousy, self-cherishing, they're like sparks that can ignite and create great suffering, not just within our own selves, but to the other person also. I will examine my mind. But when will you examine? Not after having lashed out in anger. It's too late. I mean, you can still examine that, you know. But to prevent something from harm, when will you apply the brakes to your vehicle? Not after you have banged into someone in front of you, but before, right? And how do you do it before? Because you have practiced vigilance. Yeah? Because you know if you already crash into somebody, there are consequences, there is harm, and there's a penalty. So here itself, one aspect of your mind is all the time sharp and alert. So combining these two, we will do a little meditation again.
Does it mean suppressing?
No, not at all. We'll come to that. So once again, assuming a comfortable posture, and right now being aware of your current mental state. If you have even a slight moment of irritation, fear, or grasping, recognize it. And having visualized beings in front of you, especially with whom we are having difficulty of crossing that bridge. First of all, taking a moment and also seeing them as beings who too possess Buddha nature. They are obviously unaware of it, and out of that ignorance, they're leaning towards doing actions of body, speech, and mind that are harmful, not just to themselves, but to me as well. So when I'm in their company, or when I'm in anyone's company, I will behave with humility and not with self-deprecation. Confidence does not need crutches of arrogance. Confidence comes from self-awareness. So noticing your own resistance, noticing your own subtle irritations. Take a deep breath of compassion within your own self. And recognizing that I see you. I see this anger. I see this resistance, this pride. I see you and I choose not to feed you. Take a deep breath. And now put the Four-Arm Chenrezig on the crown of your head. As this was visualized, sends out this beautiful light. It enters into your heart. And as I recite the words again, in all actions I will examine my mind, and the moment a disturbing attitude arises, endangering myself and others, I will firmly confront it and avert it. Now, with this awareness, dissolve this resistance, this anger. Dissolve this reactionary mind into peace and calm.